Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Noah, Kingcrow, The Deeper Divide. I think this song does a very good job of conveying emotion through the sound, and I think the natural progression of the song in general is nice. So, let's dive into this. I don't even think I've heard the name of this band in passing, which is neat. They only have 300 subscribers on YouTube. I'm kind of curious about their Spotify numbers, but I'm just going to assume they're kind of a lesser known band. So let's dive into this track and find out what Kingcrow is bringing to the table with The Deeper Divide.
Are sparkling in the summer night. The wind carries the
Got the heartbeat in the background.
to me. A quiet, distant choir of prayers, dreams and hopes, and trusted to the night sky while I'm miles away, feeling disconnected from what's left behind, pretending to be stronger right away. Didn't wanna break you, but what's left to say? Every time I lie, but I dug a hole where I used to hide, but just can't anymore.
Yeah, very moody. Fantastic job at crafting this atmosphere. Very emotive guitar playing right there too, even if it was hyper compressed.
Went away. I walked through the crowd, but still felt alone. Each one seemed so focused on his inner self, like a
Vocal harmonies, synth, violin, bass, guitar, of course, over on the left. So many nuanced instruments. It's really easy to just kind of miss the individuality and take the whole thing in.
every time I lied.
Having that snare only come in once every bar with that the nice rhythm on the bass kick. Ooh. Introducing a bit of darkness. Okay, I was not expecting this. Oh, really tense harmony. It's interesting that the synth and violin are gone. Yeah, a polyrhythmic snare hit. Oh, what? Really nice updating the first section for this part. Yeah, give me those layered vocals. Beautiful. Oh, what was that triplet on the snare? Beautiful bass part is what I was wanting to say there. Okay. This drummer, man. Did anybody else hear that stutter at the end? That was weird. Huh. I'm just gonna chalk that up to a glitch in the hardware. Or maybe even in the software. It's possible that when it was being streamed to me, something got some sort of hiccup in the stream. I don't know. This is a solid prog rock track. Um, let's just start with what I think is their. I've been hanging on to that for a second. It was a big yawn. I don't like to yawn during songs. I think it offends people, and it always happens during slower tracks like this. Plus, it makes me tear up. I don't know why I tear up when I yawn. Anyways, we're getting to like some weird topics here. Let's get back to Kingcrow. Let's talk about what I think is their most dominant aspect and what I think that they do the best, and that's layering. It is just the way that they go about crafting a slow burn. And I'll be honest, I felt the slow burn was just a hair bit too slow in the first, like 2.5 minutes is a big chunk of the beginning. Um, but it absolutely paid off. Where they ended up going was phenomenal. So I'm not going to go through every little aspect of how it was built up, but I do want to look at that final moment that they have, and you can go back and listen to when each individual aspect was pulled in, and each of them does recontextualize the atmosphere, the vibe of the section. It really is interesting listening to this and seeing how they go about crafting not just the larger sound, but the pathways to it. It isn't just a linear growth of a sound. We do explore it in various facets. It's beautiful. But when we get to that full sounds, we have the drums underneath, and they have this great, great polyrhythmic idea going on. No. The polyrhythmic idea is later. This is the part where we have the snare every 4 beats, so we're only getting it once per bar, and interspersed between the snare hits is this really nice rhythmic idea on the bass kick that utilizes varying lengths of eighth notes and quarter notes to create this nice groove to it that is punctuated, accented by these snare hits, and it creates this super groovy idea underneath where you can feel it in what the cymbals are doing. Hi-hat, I think, primarily here, which is quarter notes, right? So you can feel it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. You can feel that faster pace, or you can feel it in a half time where we're getting a snare on 2 and 4. Either way you feel it, it is very groovy, and I love how it completely directs and controls the feel, the rhythmic feel of the section. There's so many rhythms going on everywhere, and yet the drums are what dictate the feeling of the section. It's just so masterfully done, and some of that's going to be the composition, but I think a lot of it is the production. There is a wide use of the sound sphere in this part, and we'll touch on that in a second because I do want to dig into the production of how they craft this specific section. But first, I want to get into the rest of the instruments. We have the bass just giving us this nice warm tone. Not really doing anything too crazy, mostly just filling out the low end, and it does it masterfully. A lot of that just comes down to the tone, but it is just a really perfect tone that it's not too warm. It has a little bit of neutrality to it, and its placement in the mix just allows it to sort of just exist down there on the bottom and fill that space in. And it goes along, the bass tone itself just goes along really well with the somber feeling of the section. It's not really supposed to be um, a warm feeling, so that's why it's more of a neutral bass tone. Because usually, I talk about bass tone as a nice, warm, round tone. So this is round. It doesn't have that warmth to it, and it's because the overall vibe of the section is supposed to be kind of cold and melancholic. It's supposed to be kind of downtrodden. So, it's really cool that they didn't go for that warmer bass tone. We also have the guitar over on the right side, and it is just way out there. Very easy to forget about. You kind of tune into, oh yeah, it's moving. It's got like this constant eighth note idea. We actually heard a variation of it when we returned to the chorus at the end in our overdriven section. It was the same exact guitar idea, just overdriven now, and um, very cool for that callback. But it's just a series of eighth notes. I think it's done with reverb here, where it's played physically in the overdriven section. But yeah, it's just this moving sound off in the distance. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool too. When we get back to this chorus in the overdriven section, the guitar is more present. It's closer to the listener. It's more direct as that section of the song is very rockish. It is more direct and in your face. It lacks some of the distant atmosphere that we see here. So the guitar gets pulled in. Yeah, so that's cool. And then we shift from a reverb for the eighth notes to directly playing them, which gives them a physicality, a presence as well. Yeah, just very cool. Lots of attention to detail there. Um, there's also a lot of ethereal soundiness going on. We have synth pads, I think. We also have a violin just playing these suspended tones. They're not really placed anywhere though. They just kind of feel everywhere. They're just a very wide sound. Um, and through all of this, we craft this just very dreary, foggy atmosphere. It's very gray in a beautiful way. The way that all of these different rhythms line up and play around each other, the way that the timbres kind of mix and mold, that's not the way that the timbres mix into each other and create this hazy atmosphere. It's just really perfect on the production level. Some of that's going to be just crafting the guitar tone, some of it's going to be for the engineer, but the end result is a section that tries to have individual instruments obscure themselves. I mentioned that it's really difficult to just listen to one of the instruments. It actively feels like it's deflecting my attention so that I take in the atmosphere as a whole, um, which is neat and confusing. I don't know if that's on the production side or the composition side. It's a skill I want to learn. I've talked about this in a few songs, and it's just really cool. The whole way that I listen to music when I do it critically or actively is another word for it, is to just hone in on instruments. What is this instrument doing? And just really pick it out, and then look at another instrument and kind of go around the circle, and then kind of take it all in as a whole if I have time before we moved on to the next section. It's why I tend to have less in-depth uh, analyses on more densely laid tracks, especially when we get to prog rock or something symphonic. We get to a classical song with, 15, 16 lines at any given time and not really like sections. Like rock music has a lot of repetition, so there's time for me to move between all the instruments. But if that time is removed and it's fairly linear, I have less time to spend with each instrument and each section as a whole. So, but yeah, and so for me to like listen, what's the guitar? Oh, the guitar's over there, but what's the guitar doing? I listen to him like, oh, this atmosphere is great. How? No, I'm listening to a guitar. Why did my mind drift to the atmosphere? But it does. It consistently wants to look at the forest and ignore the trees. Very cool. I still don't know how to do it. It's a technique I don't have, but I'd like to learn one day. So, anyways, we also have the lyrics, the vocals on top of this, and they just provide this really smooth, effortless kind of vocal on top of everything. It just really fits into this dreary, misty kind of sound, and it's just a beautiful section once it all comes together. And like I said, it's kind of beautiful on the way there too. The atmosphere kind of shifts and changes with each instrument, and I think it was when the synth pads came in is really when it got that hazy vibe to it. Before that, it was just kind of dreary, it's melancholic. But this is when like the drizzle came in and started to reduce the visibility of the scene, so to speak. Very cool stuff. There was a couple more sections, and there's a lot of sections to the song is linear, and so I'm not going to remember the exact series of events. But I do remember we dropped down a little bit. And we kind of reduced it all out. And we had another small slow burn. But then here's where the interesting thing happened. We introduced a distorted guitar, an electric guitar that's distorted. And it brought a little bit of a rock vibe to it. And we were here for 8 bars, maybe. It wasn't very long before we entered into a full on rock section. A lot of power, a lot of drive, intensity. We had really strong riffage going on, but the violin and the synths were gone. I love this. This is something I talk about a lot with classical music and jazz music. If you have something larger like a big band, well, even when we get to solo sections, the removal of voices. It's not something you can really do in a 3 or 4 piece band. Each instrument has a specific role. The guitar is the higher melody, the bass is the lower, and the drums are the rhythm, your vocals are your melody. You can remove a vocal if you want a guitar solo, but you're going to lose your guitar line there unless you have a rhythm guitarist. The bass basically cannot stop playing or you lose the low end entirely. Like everybody has very specific roles, so you don't really have a chance to remove voices to alter the sound of a part of a song, which is something that you can with larger groups of instruments. In fact, classical music actually has terms for when you only have specific instruments. It's very cool. But here, we got to hear pieces without distorted guitar. We got to hear pieces with distorted guitar. We got to hear sections without the synths and the strings and all of the really nice atmospheric elements. We can just drive home that heavy rockiness. Um, it's just, it's really cool to be able to give each section a sort of sonic identity by removing or adding voices. And it's something you really can only achieve with larger groups of instruments like we hear here. And this could even have been taken a step further. We only removed two instruments, and they often did the same exact thing. Um, but it is just really nice to hear it in a rock track. Um, I was going to touch on the production, but I think I kind of already alluded to it in the first section. Just kind of this dreariness, everything kind of melds together. So, yeah, I already talked about that. Um, what was it? Oh, the bass, man. We got to talk about the bass. So, the bass in the first half of the song kind of did typical bass things, right? Lots of pedal tones, lots of suspended notes, lots of following along with the bass kick. We heard that heartbeat idea. The bass kick was right along with the bass guitar for that in the first half. In the second half, we began to introduce a little bit more technicality into it. And in that final section, we got a really slick bass line that I loved. And it was a bass driven section as well. It's not just that the bass line got a melody, a lead lick, but also it got the spotlight. It was the lead instrument in that moment. So I'm really big fan of the bass getting the spotlight, and I'm glad to hear it here. Interestingly, this is also the same section that I want to bring the next topic up, which is the drummer. You see, the drummer had some really nice fills across the song and some interesting uses of rhythmic ideas in some places, usually used as an embellishing idea. But here at the end, the drummer really got to unleash some wild polyrhythmic ideas, introducing concepts of triplets and then dotted notes, all of them against the quarter note 4/4 feeling that we had. And it was right there before the end when I think all four limbs were in different times. And it was just, yes. If there was ever a time to start showing off, it was there when things were really picking up in pace. Our bassist is doing these, this really fast riff. Our guitar is this nice driving riff to them. The vocals, I think we had vocal harmonies at this point. Oh no, we actually had the dual vocal. Oh, we gotta talk about that too. Anyways, the intensity is spiking, right? The drummer, if they had gone into some of this technicality previously, it would have been distracting. Everything was more about the simplicity. It was about adding to the atmosphere, not about drawing attention to yourself. So even in some of the more driving sections, even the guitars were doing simpler riffs just to sort of give it that rock edge, not so much to move on into technicality. We get to the end though, and everybody else is starting to pop off, and the drummer's like, "Yeah, it's my turn too. Every limb, let's go like, let's go next level. Every limb's different." And it was really neat though because it was not a minor, like a contained mini slow burn of its own. Every 4 bars, he added a new time signature in the limb. So that was just really cool. We got to hear the 4/4, and then the 4/4 with the triplet, and then the 4/4 with the dotted quarters, I think it was, and then whatever the other one. I don't know. Something weird was happening with the cymbals in that last moment. We only got like 4 or 8 bars of it. I didn't get a chance to pick up what was going on, but yeah, just another polyrhythmic idea. It was phenomenal. And then the way that it was working against the bass lick, which at the time was doing those solid eighth notes accenting every, was it every third note, right? Is it like 3-3-2? 3-3-2, that was the pattern it was going on. Just, yeah. Yes, so many good rhythmic ideas going off here. And of course, this section also has those layered vocals. We had our lead vocalist in the center channel, um, just giving us this beautiful belting section. Has these nice, really long suspended notes at the end of the sentence, and then went back to repeat the line and had the movement there. But we also had like the choir or the gang, I don't remember. It just sounded like a lot of voices on either side, kind of distant outside the band, which really works because our band is filling up a lot of space right here next to the listener. So you kind of put it around it and allow these voices to um enlap. That is not a word, Brian. Overlap. I don't know the word I'm trying to sit around. Why can't I think of this word? To surround the band and kind of give it this outside presence and kind of keep it all contained because the band is really getting big and explosive and we're in these wild rhythmic things. The band just wants to, expand, and the the choir, the extra vocals are kind of keeping it contained in a sense. It's a very nice way of going about producing that, keeping everything clear and understandable without having any overlap, but also giving everything its space, despite how many voices and instruments are going off right now. Um, yeah, just a phenomenal track. And Noah had mentioned that they liked how this band was really good at crafting an emotional connection with the music. Or let me pull this up so we have a proper thing. Conveying emotion through the sound. That was the quote. That's the wrong one. I should have let it go. That way it wasn't a juddery animation. Whatever. We do things live here. Sometimes it's not perfect. Um, yeah, 100% though. I completely agree with that. They have such a strong control over moodiness. And we heard actually several sections of this track that kind of lend themselves into this hyper layered textural moodiness of creating these atmospheres that aren't just sad or happy or aggressive or anything like that, but there's nuance to them. It's just, it is beautiful. I would love to hear another track from them, and I may end up checking out this album because I kind of dug this. This is like, it's almost like Dream Theater, but without the pretension, the pretentiousness. I didn't say that though. You guys just know what I'm saying when I say it's like Dream Theater without the something else. And that's not to say that Dream Theater is bad. They just, some songs hit me and some don't. And I think that's kind of the thing that hits me with them. um, this just feels full on about the art though. And I think that's what connects with me um, with their music. I don't remember where I was going with that though. Oh, I may check out another song. I want to hear what they can do when they're not aiming specifically for this moodiness, which does happen throughout the song. Our heavier rock sections, I feel, are designed to be contrasted with the moody atmospheric ones, and I'd like to see what other emotions they can explore because they do this phenomenally. I have no questions that if they did another 6 songs with this style of atmosphere, it would they just knock it out of the park every time. So I'm kind of curious if they can work outside of that. Just kind of see how varied the album is. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'm going to hit some lyrics. We'll see how this ties everything together, and then we'll wrap this video up. Okay. We have a track that it's called The Deeper Divide, and it seems to be about somebody who feels disconnected from their peers, from the people around them. I really like this opening. It suggests that our narrator is far away, possibly in a cave, though that might be metaphorical, hearing the distant noise from a nearby city. I really like the imagery here. City lights are sparkling in the summer night. The wind carries the noise of their life to me, a quiet, distant choir of prayers, dreams, and hopes. Uh, but then we get a very direct, what I think is thesis of the song, feeling disconnected from what's left behind. He says, ran away. I didn't want to break you, but what's left to say? Every time I lied, I dug a hole where I used to hide, but just can't anymore. The second verse talks about how he would walk through crowds and feel so uh, disconnected. I was trying to find a nice synonym for that. Can't. Disconnected from those around him. He says everybody seems so focused on their inner self, directly stating like a quiet whisper in a screaming world, buried by indifference. So I ran away. That's pretty much what it is. We have somebody who just can't seem to connect or understand how those around him operate. He just isn't on that level, on that wavelength, and decides to run away to escape that. There's an interesting line here. It says, every time I lied, I dug a hole where I used to hide, but I can't anymore, pretending to be stronger. The bridge says, if only I could be me, the real me, so many miles away. It almost makes me wonder if our narrator has tried to fit in and just doesn't like being that person. It feels like a disguise, or maybe not even them. And that's, they've tried to bridge that connection to their peers, and that didn't really work. And being themselves doesn't really work, so they just kind of shut themselves away. It's an interesting track. It really leans into that hazy feeling at the beginning. In retrospect, it kind of is isolating. I talked about it as being misty or foggy, and one of the things about walking through fog is having limited vision, can't see as far away, and it can make you feel alone even if you're surrounded by people. You can't see them, so they kind of don't exist. You might hear them, but you're just going to hear screams of help, of trying to find people you can't see, and that screaming ties back into the idea of the noise from the city. He is around a lot of people but is disconnected from them. Fog is a fantastic visual for that, and that's exactly what the music tells me in the opening sections. It's interesting then that the song ends up picking up intensity towards the end when we have the same lyrics running. I'd have to give it a listen again and figure out where exactly the lyrics fit, and just to get a better understanding of the middle. Like I said, it's all the middle's kind of hazy to me. The opening is very clear. The ending, I vividly remember. Everything in the middle is kind of uh, hazy, but that's typical, isn't it? Isn't there's a Is it recency bias? I know there's a psychological name for remembering the beginning and end of a list, or any sort of information, and kind of forgetting the middle, and that's exactly what happened here. Good old Psych 101. If only I could actually remember the stuff and not have to be like, it's something like that. It's got a name. uh, Anyways, yeah, this song comes together in some really neat ways, and I haven't quite made some connections in others, but given the nuanced writing and the few connections that I did make, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that there's actually a lot of really strong connections between the lyrics and the music, and I just can't pick it up on a first time. So those are my thoughts on Kingcrow's The Deeper Divide. What do you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Anything that stood out to you? Anything you'd like to add on to what I stated or correct me on? Let me know down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box. You'll find a link to Linktree in there, which will take you to this menu. Has links for everything related to the channel. You can find ways to support the channel. You can find my music. You can find a link to the Discord community and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. That wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. We'll continue on with this week's theme of bands that broke up and look at another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.